President Trump has reportedly signed a directive ordering the Pentagon to use military force against drug cartels in Latin America. Fox News correspondent William Lajeunesse has more from Los Angeles.
A drug dealer will end up killing 2,000 to 3,000, even 5,000 people over the course of his or her life, leaving thousands dead or with their lives and families shattered. At 4:12 a.m. in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 140 covert night deliveries moved through a federal command center where a Somali diplomat is under surveillance, fake passports, cash transfers, fentanyl violence, spreading across American cities, a network hiding in plain sight. Let me show you 4,700 arrests, $310 million in fentanyl, meth, and weapons, seized, the largest internal security breach ever uncovered on U.S. soil. But the real shock wasn't the drugs, it was who was involved. Diplomats, officials, and fully cleared personnel, the very people trusted to protect America, quietly helping to undermine it. "4:12 a.m. Minnesota. The streets were empty, the houses motionless, and a layer of winter cold stretched over everything. But inside the federal command room, the night was far from quiet. A massive digital map glowed red. The alarms had stopped, but the danger was still screaming. For months, federal agents had been tracking something they couldn't yet make sense of. Crime tied to a Somali network was rising everywhere, with reports flooding in from hospitals, police departments, and social service agencies. The numbers were staggering: drug arrests up 312%, violent assaults up 280%, prostitution and human trafficking up 190%. The DEA warned that someone dies from a drug overdose every 5 minutes. The special agent in charge said the drugs pulled off the streets had already saved countless lives. That's 294 people every single day lost to an overdose or poisoning. That's the equivalent of a 737 jetliner crashing every single day in the United States. And the stolen money was just as staggering: more than $1 billion in welfare fraud already confirmed. Whistleblowers warned the real damage over the past decade could be closer to $8 billion. The pattern was always the same. They entered the United States using falsified documents. They accessed public benefits and welfare programs, and the funds were later moved overseas. The final destination was al-Shabaab, a terrorist organization aligned with al-Qaeda in Somalia. It wasn't just fraud, it was an organized conduit. Look, this network managed to move billions of dollars out of the country. They moved billions and billions of dollars out of the system. From there, drugs and weapons began moving back in. Meth and fentanyl were produced in China, routed through Mexico, and smuggled into American cities by criminal networks operating out of Somalia. Violence followed. 2 months earlier, a police cruiser had been ambushed in the dead of night. An officer lay critically wounded. The suspects all traced back to the same network. Agents studied the data pinned across the wall. The pattern couldn't have been clearer. Every lead kept circling one name: Rami Farah, 48, the Somali ambassador to the United States. If the intelligence was right, a foreign diplomat was no ally to America. He was exploiting it, and the danger was about to erupt. If this stunned you, share this video, comment ready, and keep watching. The next chapter steps inside the embassy office. The deeper the investigation went, the darker it grew. This wasn't an embassy office at all. It was a command hub where money, documents, and deliveries moved with military-grade precision. There were no cultural programs, no diplomacy, only shadows. Every week, heavy packages arrived without customs clearance. Trucks slipped silently down the alley at 2:00 a.m. Lights flickered through the darkness. Agents tracked over 140 secret deliveries in 6 months. Not a single one appeared in the official diplomatic log. Trash searches uncovered the first layer. Shredded immigration forms, smashed SIM cards, envelopes from money transfer companies. Then investigators uncovered something far worse: a hidden cabinet filled with dozens of fake passports and IDs, all connected to the same network. Some belonged to men later arrested for robbery and assault. One woman using a false identity collected $48,000 in welfare benefits while working at an illegal nightclub tied to trafficking. Violence seemed to follow them everywhere. Police reports piled up: street fights outside grocery stores, knife attacks at bus stops, armed clashes in parking lots. In one small city, officers responded to 87 violent incidents in just 9 months, all linked to the same group. Federal analysts finally realized this wasn't about immigration. This was infiltration organized, financed, and protected from inside the system. A network growing faster than law enforcement could trace. And it wasn't slowing down, it was expanding. Type yes if you want to see the moment the doors were blown open. The order came at 4:05 a.m. A single message echoed across the encrypted radio network. All units execute, secure every target. No warnings. Armored vehicles rolled out from staging areas near the highway, engines low and heavy. Headlights dimmed. No sirens, only the deep rumble of diesel and the thump of helicopter blades overhead. The operation brought together the FBI, ICC, Homeland Security, State Police, and local deputies. More than 900 federal badges were now moving with one objective: break the network before dawn. The first target was a plain house on a quiet street. No one would have guessed it hid anything dangerous, but infrared cameras showed movement inside. As the strike team closed in, a man burst from the back door carrying a rifle. A flashbang detonated against the concrete. The street erupted in white fire and smoke. The man collapsed, stunned. Agents surged inside. They found thick envelopes of cash phones wrapped in foil and a kitchen table buried under documents. Across town, a warehouse raid exposed something far larger. Agents breached a steel-reinforced entrance using hydraulic tools. The interior looked like a normal import business, but behind a false wall was a hidden room. Inside were more than 580 pounds of narcotics, methfentanyl pills, and heroin stacked in plastic bags. The street value was later estimated at $22 million. At the same hour, a major highway exit erupted into chaos. A delivery truck tried to smash through a roadblock. Tires screeched. Shots tore into the engine block. The truck skidded sideways and slammed into a barrier. Agents pulled the driver out. The back doors flew open. Inside were duffel bags packed with weapons wrapped in cloth, serial numbers scratched away. The most intense confrontation unfolded in an industrial yard behind a row of abandoned buildings. 2 armed men waited on the roof, eyes fixed on the road. As agents advanced, muzzle flashes erupted from above. Bullets struck the pavement, sparks flying from metal rails. Federal teams pressed forward behind shields, inching ahead step by step. A second helicopter circled overhead, its spotlight slicing through the darkness. After a tense standoff, both shooters dropped their weapons and surrendered. The final target of the morning was the embassy office. The building sat silent, but drones picked up figures moving inside. A tactical unit advanced from the side. The breached charge detonated with a thunderous crack. Doors blasted inward. Agents swept through the hallway. Papers, folders, and laptops lay scattered across desks. In one room, a man tried to burn files in a small trash can, but was restrained before the flames could spread. By 5:20 a.m., the entire sweep was complete. 41 locations raided, 87 suspects, detained $3.7 million in cash, seized over 580 pounds of narcotics, confiscated 120 illegal weapons recovered. No civilians were harmed, but the operation proved one thing beyond question. The network hadn't been hiding. It was operating boldly, openly, and everywhere. Do not look away. This was war before sunrise, weapons and drugs strewn everywhere. Comment. Fight back so more people see this. Even after dozens of raids, one location remained untouched, the most sensitive and dangerous place on the map, a 2-story brick building near a government district officially listed as a Somali Commercial Coordination Office. To the public, it looked harmless. A flag hung outside and a brass plate near the entrance bore the embassy seal. Cars passed by without a second glance, but federal analysts knew the truth. This office wasn't fully shielded by diplomatic immunity. With the right authorization, it could be searched, and weeks of surveillance had revealed something alarming. The building wasn't used for diplomacy, it was used for movement. At midnight, unmarked vehicles slipped into position, forming a quiet perimeter. Agents in dark tactical gear settled behind parked cars, silent and still. No lights, no radios, only hand signals. Above them, a drone hovered, watching every door and window. Inside the command post, a single line of text flashed on the screen: authorized entry. At 10:19 a.m., the breach teams advanced. Two agents approached the rear service entrance with a small explosive charge. A flash, a boom, and the heavy door blasted inward. The sound faded quickly down the hallway. Within seconds, shields and rifles filled the corridor. A man in a suit sprang from behind a desk and bolted toward a stairwell, clutching a laptop. He didn't get far. Agents intercepted him halfway up the steps. The laptop was still warm. Downstairs, another room had been set for destruction. Black smoke billowed from a metal trash can. Papers scorched. Hard plastic warped and cracked under intense heat. Agents rushed in and overpowered two men, one clutching a lighter and a stack of files. The flames were smothered with a fire blanket, but even partially charred, the documents remained legible. At first glance, the office looked like any ordinary workplace. Printers, desks, and filing cabinets lined the room. But nothing here suggested the function of a foreign diplomatic facility. There were no cultural materials, no policy briefs, no diplomatic notes. Instead, agents found binders of identity documents, folders labeled with U.S. cities, spreadsheets tracking bank transfers, and envelopes of cash sorted by week and month. Behind a false wall, they uncovered a narrow room housing 7 computer servers stacked on metal shelves. Each server was hooked up to a satellite router displaying active data transmissions. Technicians rushed in, disconnected the cables, and secured the drives. Forensic teams would later confirm that many of those transmissions had been routed through Somalia, Turkey, and the Gulf states, eventually landing in private accounts controlled by the same network. One cabinet held a row of blue folders arranged like library books. Each folder contained lists of names, thousands of them, linked to phone numbers, addresses, and benefit accounts. Some names were checked, others crossed out. The labels were chilling, arrived, processing, sent. On a desk lay a thick ledger weighed down by a paperweight. The pages were filled with figures, monthly totals, percentages, and transfers. At the bottom of the last page was a handwritten note in clear block letters: 10% for security. Al-Shabaab. The room fell silent. Federal agents hadn't stumbled upon a simple fraud scheme. They had uncovered a system, a financial engine that funneled people into the United States, siphoned money from public programs, and sent it overseas to a terrorist organization. Outside, crowds flowed along the sidewalks, traffic lights switched. Life seemed normal. But inside the building, every file, every phone, every scrap of paper told a different story. This was not diplomacy. This was an operation, and it had just been exposed. With the embassy office secured, federal analysts finally held something they had never had before: a map. The files, computers, and handwritten ledgers seized from the building didn't just list names. They revealed networks, contacts, warehouses, and businesses spanning far beyond a single city. The first discovery was a cluster of locations operating under the same corporate identity, supposedly logistics companies and import services. In reality, many of them were empty storefronts. Dust coated the front windows. The shelves inside were bare, yet the bank accounts tied to these companies showed millions of dollars moving through them each year. One location in a small industrial park appeared abandoned. Still, when agents entered, they found 6 large safes bolted to the concrete floor. Inside those safes were bundles of cash totaling $1.8 million wrapped in rubber bands and sorted by week. The record showed the money had been collected from social benefit payments, disability, child care, housing support, food assistance, and quietly funneled into a network of overseas transfers. Another site resembled a warehouse for used furniture. Workers pulled up in battered vans, unloading chairs, tables, and mattresses, though the furniture was merely a disguise. Concealed within the chair frames were tightly sealed packets of fentanyl powder. Under sofa cushions lay metal tubes crammed with ammunition. Each delivery seamlessly merged into the everyday rhythm of the neighborhood. Yet each was just another link in the same chain: transport goods, conceal contraband, move money. Federal teams also discovered 2 factories claiming to process nutritional supplements. The buildings held assembly lines, packing equipment, and shipping logs, but a closer look at the machines exposed a very different reality. These were pill presses capable of churning out 100,000 tablets every 10 hours. Lab tests confirmed the pills were tainted with fentanyl and meth. The packaging bore counterfeit barcodes and medical labels disguising the drugs as vitamins or painkillers. Yet the most startling revelations came from the digital evidence. A forensic team examined a set of encrypted files recovered from the embassy office. Once unlocked, they revealed financial transfers to Somalia, Turkey, Kenya, and the United Arab Emirates. Each transfer had been divided into dozens of smaller payments to slip past detection. The pattern never changed public benefits, shell companies, international accounts Somalia, and a 10% cut routed to al-Shabaab. The total sum moved was staggering over $280 million in just the past 5 years, while projections indicated the true figure could be much higher if earlier records were accounted for. Even more alarming, the ledger listed individuals tied to violent attacks. Federal cross-checks exposed a distinct and troubling pattern. Over the past 3 years, the network had been connected to 14 armed robberies, 9 shootings, 5 kidnappings, and 3 murder investigations. None of these incidents were random. They formed a deliberate system built on profit and intimidation. Every dollar siphoned from social programs helped fund the next operation. Every drug shipment kept the money flowing. The raids across multiple cities made one thing unmistakably clear. This wasn't a loose collection of criminals. It was a coordinated enterprise with leadership, logistics, and intent. The map on the command center wall was no longer a puzzle. The web of locations now made sense, and every arrow traced back to the same place.
Built under diplomatic cover, the network had reached its breaking point. The final phase was now unavoidable. The United States would have to respond not only with arrests, but with force, and the repercussions would extend far beyond a single state. The raids wrapped up by early morning, yet the real shock came later when analysts assembled the evidence taken from homes, warehouses, and the embassy office. The pattern grew far beyond anything anyone had imagined. This wasn't a local crime surge. It wasn't one state in crisis. It was something reaching across the entire country. In the command center, agents pinned documents, photos, and maps along a long wall. Strings linked cities. Bank records showed transfers spanning time zones. Phone logs linked numbers in one region to criminal cases in another. The dots sharpened into a single image, a foreign-backed criminal network operating from coast to coast. At the center was Rami Farah, who wasn't merely helping people enter the United States illegally. He was running a financial engine that reached into small towns, major cities' social service offices, and public benefit systems. Every time money moved, someone overseas gained influence. The financial analysis was alarming. From just the documents gathered over the past 6 months, investigators uncovered $61 million in fraudulent benefit payments, $22 million funneled through shell companies, $14 million stashed in charity accounts, and $9 million transferred via encrypted apps. The numbers reflected only a fraction of the operations. Many years had no records whatsoever. When intelligence officials projected backward, the estimated total loss to American taxpayers exceeded $8 billion over a decade. The human cost was even grimmer. Hospitals reported surges in overdoses from tainted pills, and police records showed violence creeping into suburbs that had once been quiet. Almost overnight, shopkeepers shuttered their stores early. Families avoided walking after dark. Senior citizens, the most vulnerable to scams and drug dealers, lived in fear. In one town, emergency services were summoned to the same block 15 times in just 30 days. Fights, drug deals, forced prostitution. The individuals involved were often linked to the same network of names uncovered in the embassy files. The threat was not just social, it was violent. 2 months earlier, a patrol officer pulling into a gas station was ambushed. Bullets shattered the windshield. The officer survived but sustained permanent injuries. The attackers disappeared into the neighborhood. With the new evidence from the raids, authorities now believe those attackers were linked to the same network. By late afternoon, the situation had escalated beyond standard law enforcement. A secure briefing was convened in the White House Situation Room. Cabinet members, intelligence chiefs, and senior advisors absorbed the report. The message was unambiguous. This isn't immigration fraud. This is national security infiltration.
Officials outlined a network that exploited American laws for profit, then funneled money to a terrorist organization responsible for bombings and massacres abroad. Every dollar stolen from taxpayers was a dollar that strengthened an enemy. When the meeting concluded, a decision had been reached. Additional resources would be deployed, arrests would continue, foreign individuals tied to the operation would face removal, and the investigation would widen to every state with similar activity. For many Americans watching the news that night, the story felt distant. They saw the headlines, but not the details. Yet the truth was simple. The danger had been close all along. It had lived in familiar neighborhoods, walked through local stores, collected benefits, and sent money overseas. The war was no longer unfolding on a distant continent. It had reached inside the United States, and now everyone understood this was only the beginning. When dawn broke over Minneapolis, the snow looked clean again. The streets were calm. People headed to work. Children went to school. Cars rolled along the Mississippi as if nothing had happened. But inside the command center, agents studied the evidence pinned across the wall maps. Documents, bank records, photos, and names. What they had uncovered was no longer a mystery. It was a warning. The lesson is simple and unsettling. Danger doesn't always show up wearing a uniform. Sometimes it steps through the front door with a smile and a suitcase. Sometimes it carries diplomatic papers. Sometimes it speaks the language of helping the community. But behind the curtain, it steals, corrupts, and destroys. America is a generous nation, perhaps the most generous on earth. Welfare programs, charity funds, social services, medical assistance, they exist to support the weak, the elderly, the sick, the struggling. Yet when criminals exploit that system, when compassion is turned into profit, everyone pays the price. They uncovered the network. They stopped the money. They exposed the fraud. But the responsibility doesn't end with them, it belongs to all of us. Every American should know what happened because sunlight is the best disinfectant. Silence is what allowed this network to grow. So here's the call to action. If you care about your community, share this story. If you want the investigations to continue, hit like. If you want accountability, comment. Protect America. This is not the end. It is the warning before the next chapter.